this morning. I went to rehab.
Is it on? Okay, I'm going to call to order the meeting, October 11th meeting of the Tilton Budget Committee. And the first on our agenda is meeting minutes. So if you haven't had a chance, would you please review them now? And I apologize for my voice. If I end up coughing, somebody else is going to have to fill in.
That's what the vice president's for.
The king, vice king.
I'll make a motion to accept the Tilton Budget Committee meetings of October 4th, 2017 as written.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So be it. All right. I see that we don't have any of the outside agencies here yet since it's not 7:15. However, Tim talked to me before the meeting began, and he and Joyce are here tonight to discuss some things with us, so I'm going to turn it over to Tim and Joyce.
This will be very brief, and this is just in response to the request that I had from last week to go over the highway equipment purchase and payments, and then also the police dispatch expansion. So you should have both in front of you, so let's do the police dispatch first. So the addition to the 2018 budget, this is a full year view is what you're looking at here on this paper, and this includes 2 full-time dispatchers in order to be able to cover dispatch at the police department for 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there'll be 3 full-time dispatchers in total. We have 1 already who works day shift, and then there'll be 2 additional full-time dispatchers added. So what you're seeing here is the addition. So the rates shown, these 2 individuals would be in the collective bargaining agreement. The first half rate $18.75, second half rate $19.50 is what's been estimated. You can see the annual wages, retirement, Social Security, Medicare, and other number of things, including disability, life insurance, and so on. There are 2 health plans included, which total $28,172. Of course, this is an estimate based on known information of who we think we're going to hire. So the total cost added over and above what we're spending now for the 2018 budget would be a little over $123,000. So that equates to about 25 cents on the tax rate, and so for a $100,000 house, $25, $200,000 house, $50 a year. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. They are hiring the 2 full-time people this year. And because of savings that we had in our police officers' wages, because we had some attrition during the year, we had a higher paid officer leave and a new officer hired for that position. And then we made a change also in our prosecution during the year. So the savings that we have in our officers' wages should allow us, with little to spare, but a little bit to spare for the year, so where we can hire these 2 individuals starting November.
Jim, how stable is the health plan cost?
Well, these are last year's figures plus 5%. So we won't get the health plan figures until later this month, hopefully later this month. So that's pretty much it for the dispatch expansion. So again, it would projected to start in or around November 1st, and then it'll be budgeted for full year 2018. The highway equipment purchase and payment plan. So there's been a lot of discussion about the equipment that we purchased and how we're paying for that. So this sheet tries to net it out for you. So at the top, there's really 4 different pieces of equipment that we were acquiring. One is the Ford 550 truck, which is replacing the 1990 International. So that's purchased off the state bid contract that we purchased from Grapponi. And then all the accessories for that truck, including the wing, the plow, the wing plow, the sander, the body, I don't know exactly all the pieces of equipment, but everything that would go on it to outfit it to take care of that duty for the town is the $45,309, and right now the truck is being outfitted currently, and the total cost of that truck, $91,509, is being paid for out of the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. The other equipment, so we purchased a Kawasaki loader, and you see the model number there, the Yanmar excavator, the model number, and then a trailer, a heavy-duty trailer, and the model number there for that. So the total of those, then less the trade-ins of the Caterpillar backhoe and our 1990 International plow truck, left us with a balance of $90,400, of which we're taking $13,683 from the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. We're using the $54,429 from the state SB 38 funds, which were a special one-time fund that the town could use. And I think there are 6 different ways the town was permitted to be able to use them, one of which was for highway equipment. And then the balance of $22,288 charged to the highway equipment purchase expense line. So that total of $90,400 is what was paid to Chapel Tractor, because they're the ones that gave us the trade-in on the backhoe and the International truck. And so that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Are these all brand new equipment, or there's no years on them?
I believe so. I think
It's all brand new.
it's all brand new. I think the Yanmar might have been the Yanmar is a 17 model, that the Kawasaki might have been a 16 model, but they were unused. Yeah.
How much does that leave in the the equipment capital reserve fund?
Nothing. So that'll draw it down. Yeah. Of which we'll be putting money into it next year. So, and we did the same thing when we purchased the Caterpillar backhoe. When we purchased it, it was purchased in November of the year, and then we traded in our old backhoe. I think it was a New Holland. Is that what it was? And that drew down the highway equipment capital reserve at that time. But according to our public works director, with this equipment in place, he's going to be set for a number of years now, so that we can start accumulating monies to replace one of the 6-wheeler trucks. Okay, so hopefully that explains all that. And also, I know there was some question about whether a warrant article was needed. It's not required, because the selectmen are agents for the funds, for the highway equipment funds. And when we did the Caterpillar backhoe, that wasn't done as a warrant article either. The trade-in wasn't listed in the warrant article, and the selectmen have the authority to do that. We're trading one asset for another, essentially.
I guess the question originally, Tim, was if we were to go into a loan situation.
Yep.
That's where the question arises.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because originally, when I talked to the selectmen about this, once they had met with the Public Works Director and decided on a course of action, I presented two different options, one of which was a note for the $90,400, and one of which was paying it outright, and paying it outright with in this manner. I felt as though the loan was the better way to go, but I was thinking in terms of how we do the police cruisers, because a revolving capital reserve fund allows you to have a note in it, whereas a regular capital reserve fund does not. So, and Joyce and I had bantered it back and forth. We had discussed it, and we were congratulating ourselves on a wonderful course of action, which 3 weeks later realized that we needed to do an about face. So we were able to go back to the original plan, and I don't remember the exact date that I talked to the board about, we could do it either this way or that way. So we were able to correct that.
There was no blame attached to it. We just had a question on
Sure.
whether or not, down the road, we would have to go back to the town meeting and say to them,
Right.
hi, we took out a loan, and you guys are paying for it, whether you like it or not.
Right.
And sometimes they get a little cranky over that.
Right.
I'm curious if either one of you can address this. What were the other uses considered for the SB 38 funds?
Anything, well, first of all, it had to be something new. It had to
Well,
be a
yeah, but
new-
did the town consider anything else, or was this the only thing that was
Oh,
considered?
no, sidewalks?
Yeah, they looked at sidewalks.
That's what I had thought it was going to be used for. Isn't that what the plan was originally, to use it for?
Well, there were some suggestions of sidewalk, there was some suggestions of some barrier work at the island.
Yeah.
To do some of that. Nothing,
But
there
we
was
couldn't-
no decisions or anything made on any firm decisions on what we were going to do.
Right, but we couldn't use it for the barrier work at the island. It could only be used for, there was
Something new.
an advisement
Yeah.
from the state saying what you could use it for, so,
Yeah, that was just curious as to
Yeah.
what.
Yeah.
yep.
All right.
They had, and we did have
And-
a public hearing, and,
And we have some, I think there's about $268,000 in the highway, roads, bridges, sidewalk, capital reserve fund too. So there's more monies than we have projects as far as I'm aware of at the moment. But
well, these were projects that hadn't been being done.
that's correct.
But this
Right.
equipment was specific for doing a lot of new drainage work, which is always, it's drainage. That's what we do.
All right, any other questions?
No? The true.
Everybody satisfied? Arthur? John?
Yes.
Okay,
Marty?
great.
Everybody else there?
Go
Good.
Enjoy the evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming in and answering those questions. Yeah.
You too.
All right, 7:15, did you hear from the Red Cross? We heard nothing from the Red Cross. But they did, that doesn't make much sense to me, but.
I have a question before we get to that, if you'd like,
Okay.
or concern. We were given some material from the Recreational Council. One of the things they gave us was a scholarship breakdown of the individuals that receive scholarship monies. That borders, at least for me, on a violation of confidentiality. And we don't need to know specifically which families requested that to have monies, because that sets that into a negative. So I would recommend or suggest to the committee that we pull those sheets and they shall be destroyed, because it's not our business to figure out who they are.
I agree. Any other discussion on that?
So I make a motion that we remove from the recreational budget forms side of the page titled Scholarship Breakdown.
Yep. Everybody in agreement with that?
Last
And I
page.
didn't even look at it yet because.
I haven't looked at it yet either because
Only
it's not,
looked at
it's
the
not
first
ready,
one,
so.
but,
One of the things with a heart attack and retirement, we need to look at papers now.
Yeah. So does everybody have that?
I'm looking,
It's the very last page.
and it's from Recreation?
Recreation.
Pies. Tilton Budget, Recreation. I don't think I even brought my resume. I thought that was
The second to the last one,
Yes,
go figure.
go to your last page.
that one.
I didn't know that. You're getting close.
You're getting closer.
It
You're doing
says
good.
Tilton Northwood Rec. Near the end. The pile of it. Oh, you put all those?
This is all the stuff you gave me. This was last.
It was just before youth assistance program, that's what it was. That's one day, but that's.
Johanna, did you contact the Island Concert Series? Did you contact them to have a representative here?
I sent them
It did.
the letter that I sent to everyone.
Okay.
Their budget just came in today by email, but it was in an unreadable file, so I'm trying to get
Sometimes
a
it gets like,
Okay.
file.
you hear that? Thank you.
Huh?
Are these not?
I
No.
don't know, I had green.
They sent them? Or are they
Cinnamon,
kept them?
these are nice.
No, I can't. I just tried one with Brittany.
So no Red Cross, so we have to sit here till 7:30 for the meetings.
That's all right, we deal with it. Also, I changed it. Give you a chance to take a look at the Pemmy Youth sending request and to see if they were going to be scheduled or not.
They are going to be, correct?
They are. I've been in touch with Ashley St. John, and she is getting numbers for me. I believe they were meeting tonight. And when she gets back to me, I will put them in the schedule.
Thank you, Joanna.
And Monday is their grand opening, and I already talked to Joanna about that, and I gave her Ashley's name because she's one of the other people. She had trouble getting in touch with someone. She gave them, they picked up their forms. I had suggested to Ashley that she submit forms. Hi, Jim. How are you doing?
Yes?
Yes,
I'm taking a little early, but
that's all right.
It's all right.
We like people early. I go back home and watch the Cubs lose.
Doesn't that sound terrible?
Yes. Hope I don't get green.
I don't have that sheet. Hmm?
Do what you do well. Wait.
No, I don't have that sheet.
Sorry, is that last year's paper?
Huh?
Is that last year or this year's?
This sheet. Why?
This one. I have my last year too.
No.
Are we ready for this, gentlemen?
Yes, we do. Jean, would like to come up?
Sign in right there.
Sign on in.
Sign in.
I grew up in Manchester, and so I have done this in Manchester before, but definitely a different feel for.
Manchester looks like a court.
Well, and they just
I've been there.
and they just redid it too. It's like how much
This is
I like
Eugene Martin, Gene Martin, and he's with the Future in Sight, formerly known as New Hampshire Association of the Blind.
Oh,
Okay, so
I have copies.
Yep.
I knew Gene in another capacity. Remain unnamed publicly. Not that either one of us is embarrassed, but
Who would be embarrassed?
I never would be, you knew that.
Who would be embarrassed?
I don't think so, because we didn't have it last time, remember? And Gene, I'm gonna have people go around and introduce themselves. Jane Alden, the chair. Steve, you wanna?
Stephen Vega.
Christine Nowitzki.
Wayne Brock?
John, introduce yourself.
I'm John Scanlon. From up at the Mass.
All right, welcome. So, we didn't have all of your information, so you'll have to forgive us if we don't have. So if you would like to tell us what you're requesting and a little bit about why you changed your name, I'm curious to know that.
Absolutely. So my name is Gene Martin from Manchester and the Director of Development for Future in Sight. I started working for Future in Sight earlier this year. I've known about the organization for many years. My grandmother was a client. She passed away in 2012, but have really enjoyed coming back and working for the organization. We changed the name for a few reasons. Formerly the New Hampshire Association for the Blind. What we were finding was that eye doctors in particular were really struggling to be able to say, for example, there's a person in Nashua who would say, Association for the Blind, I know you're not blind, but you should come and see us, because really, you know, of all the clients that we see, a lot of people are visually impaired, and I think people think blindness, I say it often, but I think people assume you're either blind or sighted, but it really is a spectrum. And so what we see a lot of the times is folks will start to have vision issues, they'll see us, we'll help them, and then we might not see them for another year or two, and then they might come back again as their vision changes, especially as they get a little bit older. So a lot of times we're seeing new clients, they come in, you know, we won't see them for a few years, and then we'll see them back when their vision changes. For example, our board chair, who's completely blind, it took him about 5 years to go from sighted to completely blind. So in that point, we really see people over and over again. And so what we found with talking to doctors, the state a few years ago dismantled a program that helped kids that were 0 to 3. And when we tried to help and reach out to those toddlers and infants, we found that parents were very resistant to the name blind, because they would say, you know, my child isn't blind, I don't know about this, and we would say, well, it's visually impaired. And so I think our board chair and board was innovative with the name change, something different, but Future in Sight is a hopeful name, and so we've seen that's been really helpful. Our not pertinent to this, the budget request is for services for adults, but we've seen the number of students that we've served in the last fiscal year has doubled. Part of that is for a few reasons. One, we're finding that more and more blindness might be a secondary issue that's happening, and so as the name has come up, and again, the word blindness taking out of the name has helped parents be a little bit more comfortable to call. The other pieces I think we've been successful in working with different communities. Some of the larger communities have what we call TBIs, Teachers of the Visually Impaired. In the districts, smaller towns don't. So due to some cuts, we've actually hired those TBIs and brought them on, and so we pick up their students. So that's a little bit about why we changed the name. I think it is important, and we've seen that, and just for a marketing sense, people are more receptive. And it's unfortunate that, you know, we don't like to think that blind is a stigma, but we know for so many folks, you know, for just an anecdotal example, I have a good friend who I've known for a number of years. I started working here, and we went out to lunch. I said, you know, Gene, I'm going to have my dad give you a call. I said, oh, why, Brian? And he said, because my dad's blind in one eye. And he would never think to take services. So I think the name has really helped us, and we've been excited about that. At the same time, we're picking up more students. Because of the aging demographics, we're seeing more and more seniors. And unfortunately, as folks live, it's great that folks are living longer, but as we see that happening, the people who are a little bit older usually need more services. So the cost per service goes up, but also we're seeing more and more seniors. You know, and so for example, in Tilton, we expect to probably add an additional 2 seniors in the coming year. It's one town. It seems like 2 people isn't a lot, but usually that person could be anywhere on the low end. The average about $800 to serve that person. On the high end, on average, it's about $1,300. In some cases, there's someone who we spend about $10,000 providing services to, orientation, ability, getting them to be able to be around the community. So it really does vary depending on what people have. So we do our best to give sort of an example. So on page 4, I numbered it. I always think it's important to number pages for folks. You'll see, so this is really looking at our finance department looked at what's the cost to serve clients, how many clients we're projecting to serve in Tilton, and what that budget would be. I think in years past, you've seen probably on page 5 and other pages, the total budget. I thought it was really important for you to see. It costs roughly $8,000 to serve clients in the town. And so I just wanted you to know that, we're asking for $2,000. That helps serve a large portion of the folks in town. So I thought it was important versus, you seeing a $2.5 million budget. If you really look at Tilton, that's the average. Like I said, it goes a little bit up depending on on where it is, but I wanted to sort of give you that. So we are asking for $2,000 to help cover what we expect to be about $8,000 in costs for clients.
To add to what you said, there have been 2 people this past year that I've referred to the organization. And both of them were elderly, both of them had macular degeneration. And interestingly enough, I always thought of that in terms of being something gradual, which I think it can be, because a couple of the other people I had worked with, it had been gradual. These 2 people was quite sudden. And one of them is no longer a Tilton resident, but a Northfield resident. But one of them ended up having to move out of their home, which is a very sad situation, because that's one of the goals of the elderly that we work with, is to keep them in their homes as long as we can.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the ways I know that several of the elderly people I've worked with have been associated with your organization, and they've been able to stay in their home because you've come in and you've provided them with equipment that they could
Absolutely.
use, and have helped them out and given them tips on how to do things.
And that's really the whole purpose, to be able to, we always talk about living and thriving, really being able to live independently in your home. When my grandmother passed away, she was 85, and it was due to complications because of a fall, but she was legally blind and was able to live by herself in an apartment because of the services that were provided. So we do our best. It's always the goal to make sure that people are able to live independently in their homes, and I think we do a pretty good job.
How many clients do you currently have in the Tilton area?
So currently, right now, we have 8 clients. So when we talk about clients, we always talk about them in the last fiscal year. So our fiscal year, we saw 8 clients. If you pulled the database, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I know that what normally happens is, to Jane's point, we normally will get in a town this size, we'd maybe get 3 people that are new. We'd see maybe 4 people who would step away for a year, and then we'd come back. So when you look at it in sort of 3 years, we see a lot of people returning years. So we're projecting, sort of based on other numbers and what we're looking statewide and breaking out, that we'll probably see about 10 clients.
Okay, so which is about $200 for a client from the town's donation.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, looking at the projection for 18, you're going to be operating heavily in the red. Is there goals for additional revenues? And
So-
it looked like from 15 to 16, the same thing happened. You're not getting enough recovery.
So a few things. We do have an endowment that sort of covers that. We do, so to be able to help that to be able to manage expenses. The problem with anything, unfortunately, is that there are more and more seniors, and so it's really been, and unfortunately, and I think we're doing a few things. We started an occupational therapy program. I think there's a assumption that what we do, for the most part, is under the educational model, so we don't get reimbursement through health insurance. We're starting to do, through some grant funders, starting an OT program, and so that allows us, because of the occupational therapy, allows us to start to get medical reimbursement. So we're in the process. It's going to take us a few years, but I think we plan in about 10 years to sort of move away from the vision rehab folks and be able to get reimbursed. It's still not everything, but that the adult side and plus the increase of students, which is paid for by Medicare, we're able to help to do that. So we are working on the situation. We know that in probably 10 years we'll be a little bit more self-sustainable and we won't have to rely as much on fundraising and other support.
You mentioned one thing that I had not heard before. You said that the monies you were asking us for were for adults. I believe that we have some vision impaired children in our school system. Do you not service them at all?
We do. We have a contract with the school, and so we essentially are able to get, I believe the number is about 85% of that cost from the school. So we didn't include, and again, I would have to see. We prepared for the adult services population, but I would have to see if there are folks in the Tilton school. I'm sure there's at least one student, but for the most part. And now those hours, if there was a student in here, that a student could be seen 75, 100 hours in a year. It's a higher rate. So I mean, because you're meeting with them for a few hours every week. So for the most part, for the school districts, we're able to get almost 85% of the costs.
Plus it's complicated. With 3 towns, it's hard to figure out who to bill and when.
Exactly, and it's a possibility. So if I know this is the case in other communities, but if they lived in Tilton, but they, and I don't know the school system situation, but if the school was outside, even if they went to the Tilton school, we wouldn't show them here because they're not residing in Tilton. We sort of go by where they actually reside.
Yeah, where they are.
I brought that up because I do know that there are some vision impaired that do get help from you, so
Right.
I just wanted to bring that up.
Because we do have kids, some of our children in Tilton, that grade kindergarten to third grade or 5th grade, go over to Northfield and Sanford.
Yeah.
So they're not even in Tilton.
Exactly.
Middle school, high school are here in Tilton, which would be completely mind-boggling when you start looking at billings other than letting the school district figure the mess out. They get enough money.
I have one last question.
Sure.
And I know that, I think the name change is going to help, but I know that I've suggested several people, and again, the seniors in the community, that they get in touch with you. And their reaction was, well, I'm not blind, I can still see, I can still drive. And I explain that to them, and I get over that hump. So I think the name change will help there. But I do find that as people begin to have problems with their sight, they don't even know that you exist. What are you doing as an organization to reach out to people in Tilton? And I know I'm familiar with the people in Tilton. And as you say, it's an elderly population that's getting older by the day. Look at Wayne and me.
I know.
So a few things. So for a number of our larger programs, we have grant-funded programs. So for example, the OT program, we recently received monies for that. And in each of those grants, we've been really trying to sort of do a little bit of that. We've planned through some funders and through some of our board support. We're going to sort of better promote. We changed the name around March 1st. And we had great sort of publicity from that. We're working with WMUR to do a PSA, which is free, which is great. We have a funder who's willing to cover the cost for NHPR to do some radio advertising around state. So we are taking a slow approach. Our CEO, who is very energetic and excited, says, we got to do this now. And one of the things is, we really want to slow it because our biggest fear is that if we put this out here and all of a sudden we double, because there's stats that say, Cornell will say that there's 28,000 folks that are blind in the state or severely visually impaired in the state. The CDC says about 30,000. If you look at our client database in the last 10 years, we've served about 10,000 people. So we know there are more people out there. That's why I say, it could be 10, but if you look at it in the last 10 years, we could have helped 100 people. I just don't have that number, but I know it does go back. But we're slow doing it as we build up revenue, because the biggest fear that we have is, it would be a great problem to have, I guess, but that's our fear, is that as we sort of advertise. So the name has helped. We saw a huge uptick in that. It slowed down a little bit. And in a month or two, we're going to start a public service campaign to sort of build it up, but we've been building the fundraising up too, because we know that if we doubled the amount of clients we served, or even added 30% more, it would be tough to be able to manage it. And we really, we get a small amount of reimbursement from the state through the Department of Education. But it really is, when you look at, if you look at $100,000 in service, it's usually about $5,000, and that number is slowly declining like anything else, so.
I always throw out the statistics because I think it's a very important one, and that's that macular degeneration is probably the worst thing that happens to people as they age. And the last figures I looked at, like 83% of the people over 65 will develop it at some point in time. Now, the two people that I know recently who have developed it, one is in her 70s and one is in her 80s. So it's hard to say when it's going to hit. I know someone also who's in her late 60s, and it started with her in the late 60s, so
Yeah, you never know.
you never know. Okay? Any other questions?
Well, so thank you again
Thank you.
for your support, and I appreciate the work you do. I know, having worked in state government and staffed the state senator who chaired the finance committee, I know that this is really hard work and sometimes often, always thankless, so I appreciate the long nights. Hopefully we'll be able to get to the game. And if you have any questions afterwards, you know how to reach me.
I do, thank you.
Good to see you, Gene. Thank you. All right. Did you hear from New Beginnings?
Can't touch them.
Green ones, can you do the green ones?
Green ones I can do. I don't know about the red stripe. I don't know about the red stripe.
Green stripe ones are there.
I know the red, photograph ones I can do. I tried.
So if there's nobody else, Jane, you want to just vote on this one?
I was going to say, let's just...
But you have-
I'm ready. I'm ready to
Okay.
vote on this one.
Those are the easiest.
I make a motion that we fund the, I'm gonna get a Future Insight group for the amount that they asked for, which is $2,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
Nay. Not opposed to funding.
And I'm
it.
abstaining.
It's just the amount.
I'm abstaining because I'm on the advisory committee, so
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 ayes and 1 nay,
one night.
1 abstention.
We
Okay.
gave him 2,000 last year, right?
1,500. All right, is there, anybody got anything else? If you don't have anybody here,
We're meeting next Wednesday.
we're meeting every Wednesday from here on out except Thanksgiving. And John's cooking turkey and
Yeehaw!
putting the spread on downstairs for the Thanksgiving one.
If the whole time.
And have we got any materials from CASA, financials? Okay. So we got Old Home Day CASA and Genesis next week.
Yep,
Okay.
all right.
So what do you do with the no-shows?
We'll still discuss them.
Yeah.
Since there's no other business, I make a motion we adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
John, would you do the honors, sir? Turn the-
You do know.
I think so. I can try.
If not, throw it out the window.
I'll not be responsible for the results.
Joanna, do you have a shredder?
And then they go.
I don't, but I can try.
Okay, you have access to one though.
You go look at what we gave them last year, or they know.
So I was up at rehab, cardiac rehab. They're complaining my blood pressure was too high.